at the
BlackBerry,
phone.
it's gone. It's gone. BlackBerry is gone. Now,
Yeah.
that's an example of progress. And BlackBerry lost a lot of jobs, I'm sure. And it's a good thing for BlackBerry to go under because it was replaced by something better. Now, the reason why I use this process, this creative destruction, why I mention that, is
Yeah.
because there's another function of the state. If you and I enter into an agreement, I am going to sell my car to you tomorrow morning for 100 rand, for example, and there is an agreement between the two of us. You and I are free individuals, and we enter into this agreement completely as free individuals, and we decide to enter into a contract.
It's Phumlani Majosi. I'm back on the Phumlani Majosi show this week. I have a very interesting man. You should know him. He's always in the media. He's always saying the right stuff that needs to be said. He was on the show last year. I think it's been more than a year. Oh, well, last year, sometime last year, he was on the show. He's not been around for a while now. He's back to talk to me, and that is David Root. He's the chief economist at Efficient Group. Efficient Group. How are you, sir?
I am much better, thank you very much. Especially now that I'm talking to you and being always right, that is really pushing it. That's not the case. I know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You're an economist, you're an analyst, and you are doing absolutely excellent work. So my congratulations to you. Well done to
Ah,
you.
wonderful. I love that. I take it as a very good compliment
And
from you.
just
Yeah.
something just behind you. There's a new book there, by the way. I hope you're going to say something about that.
Of course, of course. Definitely for sure. No, David, those words they mean a lot to me. So thank you so much. We try and do things the right way. We try to talk about things that matter to South Africans, right? Not political rhetoric. Things that will empower our citizens in the country. And today, you and I would like us to talk about government interventions in the economy. We have seen that over the past decades. The idea that the government should intervene in cases where there is a market failure, right? Market failure occurs when free markets they fail to allocate resources efficiently. That's the usual formal definition. The current president of Argentina, Javier Milei, I'm sure you and I will talk about him a bit. I think we both do like him. He's a libertarian, very much a free market, leader. I would say the only free market, real free market leader in the world at the moment. He says there are no market failures. There is nothing called market failure. Wherever there is something wrong in the market, it's because the government intervened or did things
Exactly.
wrong. That
Yeah.
distort markets. What I want also that you agree with Javier Milei that there are no market failure.
Yeah. No, but I must add a small
A small
but
part,
a
yeah.
tiny but. And this tiny but is that for let me give you an example of market failure, where if I pull out a gun and I stick it in your face and I say, "Give me your money," in a way that is market failure. Because of course you still have a choice, by the way, you can say no. But that's a really bit of an unfair choice, you know. And I call this a market failure. Well, a little market failure because the actual failure is not the market in this example. The actual failure is the state not protecting you.
Ah, so the
That
state
is actually
should be
the
there to
failure.
protect you.
Yeah. Because I mean, you and I, we both the libertarians. In the case of Xavier Milei, he calls himself a capitalist anarchist, I think.
Okay.
And I've
Yeah,
been called an unreconstructed new liberal fundamentalist, by the way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've been called many names in the past. And I'm quite happy to call myself an anarchist. And I don't mean the bad kind, not the kind that burns stuff down.
Yeah.
But having said all those sort of things, I still believe that there is something to be said for certain roles for the state. The state should do some stuff.
Mm,
And the most important one is the one that I've just explained to you now. If I stick a gun in your face, there is a role for the state to protect us. And that's the
yeah.
primary function of the state.
Yes.
And the state, by the way, is not a separate entity. It is not something that exists for the sake of the state. The state is us. It's us, the state. And we should look at it as such, as us. It's us. And the
Yeah.
job of us is to protect one another. I mean, I cannot allow that somebody robs you because the guy's going to rob me the day thereafter. So I'm going to protect you. Me and my neighbor and other guys, we're going to protect you because it's in our interest that you don't get robbed. So that's the primary function of the state, to make
Mm.
sure that people are safe and their stuff is safe as well.
Yeah. What else? You've already opened up with the what the state should do. What is its role? What else other than what you just said? What else should the government do in
Then,
our society?
okay, let's start at the extremes.
Yeah.
And an extreme example is exactly what I've just mentioned. The state is supposed to protect us, and that means internally and externally. So it's policing and defense. Those are the two things that the state, that is the primary functions of the state.
Yeah.
But there's a third function and a very important function as well. But before I get to that function, I just want to make a comment about the economy. Scumpeter, he had this to say about the economy. He said, the economy is a process of creative destruction. I think it was him. Creative destruction. Now, I like that. I like that because, and we should actually talk about that because
Mm.
an economy creates all sort of new stuff all the time, but an economy also finds out that certain things don't work and then we destroy that. And that's where politicians quite often make a mistake. They want to keep zombie companies alive because they want to save jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that is
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's part of the process. If you want to have a successful economy, there must be successes, but at the same time, we must get rid of the dysfunctional, the ineffective, the old, the inefficient, and that sort. So companies must be created, but some companies must die as well. Now, the reason why I say that, so you must continuously experiment with something. There are many examples. At one stage, Nokia was the biggest cell phone maker in the world.
Yes.
No, Nokia,
Yes.
yeah, Nokia hasn't
Nothing
been
else. Yeah.
destroyed, but they've been cut down quite significantly. And the biggest cell phone manufacturer today is Apple. So, and we
There
benefit
was
from
also
that because
David. There was also BlackBerry. Remember BlackBerry? The
BlackBerry,
phone.
it's gone. It's gone. BlackBerry is gone. Now,
Yeah.
that's an example of progress. And BlackBerry lost a lot of jobs, I'm sure. And it's a good thing for BlackBerry to go under because it was replaced by something better. Now, the reason why I use this process, this creative destruction, why I mention that, is
Yeah.
because there's another function of the state. If you and I enter into an agreement, I am going to sell my car to you tomorrow morning for 100 rand, for example, and there is an agreement between the two of us. You and I are free individuals, and we enter into this agreement completely as free individuals, and we decide to enter into a contract. I will sell my car to you tomorrow morning for X amount of money. Tomorrow morning, you come to me and you say, here's the money, you want the car. And in the meantime, I've changed my mind. So you have gone out of your way to borrow money or to take a mortgage or whatever the case may be. And now suddenly I say, listen, I don't want to continue with this contract anymore. No, that is wrong on my side. It is wrong because if two independent economic agents enter into a contract in free will, then they must adhere to that contract.
Yes. Yeah.
They must do that because my word is my honor kind of thing. And you cannot plan in an economy if people just keep on changing their minds all the time. Of course, you can change your mind. But if you say, I'm going to stick to this is my contract, I agree to sell my car for X amount of money to you, I must do that. And that's another role for the state. And that is to enforce contracts. The
Mm.
state's role and another function of the state is to enforce contracts. So in this example, you will go to the courts and say, listen, we had a contract and you want this contract to be enforced. And the courts will say, listen, there are two free individuals. They entered into an agreement, and it's my job as the courts or the state then to enforce this contract, and you will force me to sell my car to you. Right. So there's a third function of the state. So defense, policing, and the enforcement of contracts. Those are
And
the primary functions of the state.
yes.
Then, depending, so that is, I said I'm going to start on the extreme.
Yeah.
Then from here on, so those three functions of the state we all agree on. But from now on, we can start debating on whether the state's got a role or not. Now, there are some people that would say, but the state also must provide certain infrastructure. And a good argument is that you can't build a highway and compete in a market with highways because you only need one highway. You can't put two or three highways next to one another and
Yeah. Yeah.
compete by the. So there are these kinds of arguments. And I must be honest, some of these arguments sound kind of valid. There are
Mm.
another arguments that, for example, a nuclear power station, they are so extremely expensive. The payback period is so very, very long that the private sector will not provide that. So that's another argument that the state can provide something like that. Then
Mm.
there are some other stuff, not only infrastructure, and I'm not for or against. My default mode is that the private sector must provide stuff. And before the state starts providing that, we must really think very, very hard before we allow the state to do that. But there are arguments, let's be honest about it. Then there are some other more socialist kind of arguments. For
Yeah.
example, is that the state's responsibility to provide education? Now, and again, I'm reluctant to give into that demand that the state must provide education. But then I must also admit there are some people that simply won't send their kids to school or they simply cannot afford it at all. And maybe if you really twist my arm very, very, very hard, I might give in a little bit and say, in some very exceptional circumstances, the state should provide only a little bit education. There's another example, and that is health services. Now, if somebody is really sick, he hasn't got the money, he can't go to a doctor, the private sector will not, then maybe the state should, and again, it's a very, if you squeeze my arm, turn my arm very, very hard, maybe. But there are arguments against these things also. For example, today, of course, all these things need to be funded. And today, the state simply accepts that they have to provide education and infrastructure and health services and an airport and an airline, and they must have all sort of things, electricity and water and everything. The state provides everything today, but it
Yeah.
needs to be paid for. It needs to be
Yes. Yeah.
paid for.
Yeah.
And here's this interesting piece of statistic because we talk about these things like, for example, schools and health services and so on. If you go back 100 years, the state played a much, much smaller role in an economy 100 years ago than what it's playing today, except with wacko experiments like the Soviet Union. But in most cases, the state was significantly smaller 100 years ago than it is today.
Mm.
And what is interesting, 100 years ago or in the past, long back, the private sector contributed much more uh, to the poor, to some sort of social cause than
Yeah.
what they do today.
Yeah.
So the point I want to make, if you get a case, for example, where somebody is really sick, and we do not have a public health service, I promise you, the private sector will step forward and say, listen, I will help this guy because
Mm.
we are humans. You
We are
don't
humans. Yeah.
need state. Yeah, people help one another. People, and in the past, people contributed much more to a good cause than what they're contributing today because the thinking is the state is supposed to be doing that. I'm not going to do that anymore because I pay a lot of taxes already. And the state is hugely ineffective and inefficient. While in the past, we realized the state is not going to provide certain services, and we were much more willing in the past to help our neighbors if they're in trouble somehow, and to help a sick person if he hasn't got medical fund and the like. So it is really, a bit of a debate where there are some things that I'm pretty sure the state should provide, and for the rest, it's really open to debate on whether the state should provide those services or not. But
Mm.
there are some
Yeah.
other there are some other measures, other ways to determine whether the state should provide certain things as well. And we
Yeah.
could talk about that as
Yes. Yeah. So I wanted to let's talk about jobs, job creation, right? Should the government create jobs? We saw the unemployment rate. You saw the numbers coming out last week, I believe. Unemployment rate
well.
rising in the country. The youth unemployment rate is at, well, the official one is close to 50% now. When expanded, it's basically beyond
Let's
60%. It was, yeah,
mhm.
about there. should the government, Davi, intervene and create jobs? Because some people, I was seeing some commentary on social media. Some people, they are saying that we have this high unemployment rates because the government is not intervening, doing more to create jobs.
Okay, there's much to this. So
Yeah,
the first
yeah,
one is, are jobs good things? And my answer to that is that job, not in all cases, some people like their jobs actually, but many
yeah.
people go to work not because they want to, they go to work because they have to go to work in order to stay alive. So in many cases, jobs are not very popular. People do not want to work.
Mm,
Okay. And I would say that is completely and totally natural because I also don't want to work. I want to sit around the pool and having pina coladas the whole day, and I don't want to work. But I want pina coladas, by the way.
yeah.
And in fact, that is exactly what we are doing. Go and have a look at new technology. The reason why we have new technology is exactly, listen to these words, to destroy jobs.
Mm,
Think about that. I
yeah.
bought my wife a vacuum cleaner. And the reason why I bought my wife a vacuum cleaner, because she says using a broom is far too much work. She wants to work less and use a
Yeah,
vacuum cleaner.
yeah.
Another example is, now this is a silly example, always use this. If you really want to create jobs, then ban cars. Because then we're all going to ride horses, and horses need a lot of work, and they eat a lot of food, and they shit a lot, you have to clean up and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Here's another, something that actually happened. An economist visited Chinese, communist China during the rule of Mao Zedong, and Mao Zedong took this Western economist to a big building project where people are building a new dam wall. And they're working with picks and shovels and things like that. And so this economist asked them, but why don't you use heavy machinery? It's much more efficient and quick. And Mao Zedong answered, he said, because we want to create jobs. And then this economist replied, but take away the picks and shovels and give them spoons.
That was Milton Friedman.
Was that Friedman?
It was,
You know
yeah.
this,
I remember the
you
story
know
very
this.
well. And we just, I think, what was it last month?
So,
Yes, yeah, we celebrated his
but
legacy. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So the point is, yeah, we don't want to work, but we want stuff.
yeah,
So let's make a distinction between the two. Stuff or things that we want equals economic growth. Job equals suffering and sweating and hard work. It's not nice. So can't we create wealth without creating jobs? And the answer is without a doubt, yes, we can. But that's what politicians don't understand. They confuse so-called job creation with keeping people busy. They think if you keep people busy that you've created a job. You have not. An example is if these flag wavers next to the road, they contribute nothing,
yeah,
but you at least keep them busy. That's
mm,
not a real job. That is
yeah,
keeping people busy. So the emphasis must never be on job creation, never ever. It must always be on economic growth. And when the economy grows, then inevitably companies are forced to employ people.
yes, yeah. Forced to employ people. And what about the bailouts? There has been, there have been complaints over the past decades. We saw them during the global financial crisis of 2008 that the American government is bailing out these big companies. Some people will say the government must intervene and save a certain company because otherwise jobs will be lost. So we are
Yeah,
saying that the
exactly.
government shouldn't bail out companies,
Of
private
course
companies.
not. You're keeping zombies alive. You're keeping
Yeah.
zombies alive. Distraction, creative distraction. Let the zombies must die. Get rid of the
Mm.
zombies. Never ever try to create jobs. Try to destroy jobs, but try to grow the economy and jobs will follow. Well, see what's been happening. If you bail somebody out because you want to save jobs, then you get these monsters called Eskom and Transnet and things like that, that just keep on losing money.
Yeah.
If a business is not profitable, the business cannot survive. If it cannot survive, it simply means it's not contributing to the economy. It's not a contributor to the economy. It's a burden to the economy. But politicians again don't understand this stuff because that's why they're politicians and not business people because they can't do business. It's very difficult to do business. And but they assume the power. They simply assume that they have the right to to prescribe to business how to run business, and they haven't got a clue how it works. And that's why they
Mhm.
do stupid things like trying to save zombies. That's why they're doing stupid things like creating jobs. Don't do that.
Mm.
Create an environment that's good for business and leave those decisions to business. And business will create wealth and part of the side effect, part of the result of wealth creation is people will get jobs as well. No
Mm.
business will go out of its way and try to use as much electricity as possible. No farm will go out of its way and try to use as much fertilizer as possible because they will not survive. All businesses go out and try to use as little labor as possible. And that's a good thing. And politicians don't understand the simple, straightforward, basic business principle.
Yeah, business principles. Yeah. Now let's talk about these government interventions, Davi. Um, we'll talk about BE, Black Economic Empowerment. We'll talk about minimum wage laws, your thoughts on Labor Relations Act, as well as the NHI. There are other forms of what you could call government interventions in our society, in our economy. But let's start with Black Economic Empowerment. The idea here is that, well, at a high level, um, Black people were left behind. They were oppressed by the apartheid system. They are at the bottom of the economy. Therefore, we need to uplift them through certain government policies because the market is going to fail them. Government must intervene, come through. What are your thoughts on Black economic empowerment as a form of intervention in our in the
Well,
economy?
and and we can debate on what the role of the state is and what the role the state should and shouldn't do without going there. If I hear the word empowerment and I think of my own children, I mean they are very dear to me. I love my kids very much. And that's what I do. And my parents did it to me. They empowered me. And I'm empowering my children to make sure that they get world-class education, skills development. I
Yeah,
empower my kids to make sure they are in a safe environment. I empower my kids to make sure that they have food to eat. Those are, and I empower my kids, hopefully one day with the necessary skills. Hopefully, I can leave them some capital and they can go on with the business. That, in my way, is empowerment. Now, let's see. I don't know if you've got, and I can give you a couple of other things as well. But let's use these things and ask whether we have empowered Black people in South Africa the past 20 or 30 years. Look at
yeah,
education. Is education, because that's the beginning of real empowerment. People must have skills. Is education actually, has it improved the past 20, 30 years? And the answer is the education system, the skills development system in South Africa is absolutely horrible. And the people that suffer most are Black people, poor Black people. South
yeah,
Africa is a horribly dangerous place with very high levels of crime. And that's another. So is it a safe environment? The answer is certainly no. And who's suffering? Black people. Something
yeah,
else. Do our kids get enough to eat in South Africa? And the answer is 25% of our children in South Africa are malnourished. And who's suffering? Black people. So if you
yeah,
ask me if we have Black economic empowerment, I will tell you without any fear of contradiction that we do not have Black economic empowerment because our Black people suffer on things like even having food. The environment is dangerous. You can't get a job because the economy is, and it's the Black people suffering. But we have something called BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. And the people benefiting from that are not the masses, because we've established that already. The people
yeah,
benefiting from that are a few well-connected Black individuals that benefit hugely to the detriment of the masses of Black people out there. So no, we do not have Black economic empowerment. And this thing that is called Black economic empowerment is a horrible policy that's there only for the enrichment for a few well-connected individuals. And the people that suffer are black people. We have to get rid of this as soon as absolutely possible. There are many other things as well, but this is a major, major obstacle to economic growth in a country. We don't
Economic growth
have
in the country.
BEE. We don't have that, only a name.
Yeah. So it's a bad government intervention. Terrible,
It is
horrible.
horrible. And just by the way, there were some other relatively bad policies that we changed. And a very good one is inflation targeting. We had inflation targets 3 to 6% in South Africa, and we changed it last year to 3%. And the
Mm,
politicians didn't want to do that initially, but that's an example of a policy change that had hugely positive impacts on the economy. And the next step was bring the inflation target down to 2% and even
yeah,
lower eventually. And thanks to
yeah,
Lesetja Kganyago, by the way, because he's been beating that drum all the time. So that's an example where a policy was changed for the better, and we're all getting the benefits from that. The same with BEE. I promise you, if we get rid of the so-called BEE, I promise you it's going to have a huge and a massive impact on the economy. There are many other examples. The primary function of the state is to protect my goods, my stuff, and to protect me. The state works for me. I'm the most important person there out there. Me and you and the other people. And if we can get the state to start to actually protecting me and to not threatening to steal my stuff, because that's what they're doing, expropriation. They're threatening to steal my stuff. You will
yeah.
see if they get rid of
Expropriation. Yeah.
remember, if expropriation, the mere fact that legislation exists where the state can steal my stuff makes the state irrelevant. Let me repeat that. The fact that we have expropriation without compensation on the statute books makes the state irrelevant because the role of the state is exactly to protect me. And now the state is becoming the thief.
Mm,
Then we don't need the state because they don't do it. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Get rid of them. The state has become irrelevant because they've become the thief. They're supposed to protect us from the thieves.
yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. Minimum wages, minimum wage laws, the national minimum wage that we have now. I
Here's,
forget the number.
here's another one. Here's another one. There are a couple of rules in the economy. One is you
Yeah,
must protect private property rights. The second one, you must protect and encourage and create an environment that's conducive, that's good for free trade. Because
yeah.
there's a saying, we all know the saying, there's no free lunch. But there is one free lunch. And that free lunch is free trade. Because the buyer
Davi, I've lost you.
Bumlani,
I lost you there. What happened? Is it me or you?
I don't know. No, you got lost. Come, let's come back
Me. Okay, free trade. Start from there. Yes.
okay, let me start again. Okay, there's a saying, there is no free lunch.
Yeah.
But I beg to differ. There is one free lunch, and that is when two economic agents trade with one another. Both the buyer and the seller will gain from this transaction because otherwise the transaction would not have happened.
Yeah.
So after the transaction, both parties are better off. They've literally created wealth out of nothing. But you
Yes.
cannot trade if you don't own something. And that's why the protection of private property rights is so important. All right. Now, come back to your question about minimum wages. Minimum wages says that even if you and I want to trade our property, which is our labor, if we want to trade that between the two of us, minimum wages prevent us from doing a transaction, and minimum wages basically prevent us from creating a free lunch. We can't
Mm,
create a free lunch. It's against the law to create a free lunch. And by the way, the minimum wage that we have in South Africa is not whatever it is. I've forgotten what it is. The actual minimum wage in South Africa is zero because that is what people get that can't get a job. Their minimum wage is absolutely zero. Now, 100 Rand a day is very, very little. And nobody, I can't see how you can survive on 100 Rand a day. But try to survive on nothing.
yeah. It's
That's a
very bad.
horrible, stupid law. Get
Yeah,
rid
yeah.
of that. And in the meantime, we've got unemployment levels of 34%. Madness.
It's
Madness.
madness. Madness, man. NHI, what are your thoughts?
NHI. It's not going to happen, by the way.
Okay, it's not going to happen. That's what you are saying.
It's not going to happen. So we don't even need to talk about it. It's not going to happen. And there are many reasons for that. But one reason is, and I know the numbers, because we don't have money. So it's not going to happen. But you know,
can the government print the money?
they can. No, they can. And they actually do all over the world.
So
But
what do you mean we don't have the money?
Well, ask the Zimbabweans. There was a time when they had many gazillions of Zimbabwean dollars, but those gazillions of Zimbabwean dollars couldn't buy anything. So money is not wealth. It's what you can buy with the money. That is what wealth is. So if you print a lot of money, you will find you will have all this money and everybody's going to be a billionaire, but you won't be able to buy anything with this money. So yeah, you can print the money, but I promise you it's going to destroy your currency in the process as well. So the NHI, no. I think what we can do instead of the NHI, which is actually the nationalization of health in South Africa, that's the idea behind that. What we should be doing, we should actually privatize completely the existing public health system in South Africa and give everybody access to private health. Why do you want everybody to make use of the state when here's an opportunity where everybody can actually get private health services? Why is it that the politicians don't go to a public hospital? Why are they all going to a private hospital? Because the private hospitals are much better. That's why. So if they're so sure that the NHI is going to work, let's make a law and say all politicians must go to state hospitals. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, Davi, we have a few minutes left now. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Labor Relations Act, right? Some people have complained that, it's made it difficult to hire and even to fire. Firing someone is very difficult in the country. So the whole process has been difficult for many employers. It's been they argue it's been a negative for our labor markets. But how do you see our Labor Relations Act?
Yes, it is. Let me just make this comment, and that is, I am very much in favor of collective bargaining. If labor wants to organize themselves collectively, go for it. I don't have a problem. And you go as labor as a collective, and you go to the employer and you say, listen, I speak on behalf of all the people working for you, and here's my mandate, and I want to. There's nothing wrong with collective bargaining and organizing yourself in some sort of trade union. I don't have a problem with that. But you can't force anybody to belong to the trade union. And if somebody wants to not belong to a trade union, if somebody's prepared to work for less, for example, if somebody's prepared to work on other kinds of conditions, then that individual should be free to do that. And I'm afraid what happens, and of course there must be minimum standards in terms of safety and stuff like that. But the labor legislation in South Africa is so onerous and is so extremely expensive. And it's so extremely difficult to get rid of workers that don't do their job, to fire people, that it's even expensive to employ people in South Africa. Just go and try to employ people. I'm not even trying to fire somebody. Try to employ people. You have to register them here and there and everywhere, and you have to deduct taxes from. It's a process. It's expensive to employ people, and it's more expensive to fire somebody. So no, that labor legislation in South Africa is a horrible thing. We have to overhaul the thing and make it much, much easier for employers and employees to buy and sell labor.
To buy and sell labor. That's powerful. Voluntarily buy and sell labor.
Exactly.
Yes. So let's close off, Davi, with them. When listening to you, it sounds, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here in closing, it sounds like you are saying there are too much government interventions in the economy, that it's slowing down our economy. Am I right to conclude that from you?
Without a doubt. And let me give you one number. Give me one number. My expertise is fiscal policy. I do taxes and state expenditure and state borrowing and that sort of stuff. That's what I do. I look at the various taxes and so on. Now, Poblani, the press hasn't picked up on this, and I'm very angry at the press. And here's some number. Listen to this number. I'm talking only about national government, the Minister of Finance.
Yeah.
The tax burden as a percentage of GDP in the first quarter of this year reached the highest point in the history of South Africa. The tax burden on South African economy is the highest it has ever been today in South Africa. It currently stands at 30% to GDP. I'm not even talking about the local authorities and the provinces and the state-owned enterprises because they are all institutions that tax us. I'm only talking about the main taxes, personal income tax, value-added tax, company taxes, fuel levy, and that sort of stuff. Currently stands at 30% of GDP. That is how much money the state takes out of your pocket. And that, by the way, because the tax burden is so excessive in South Africa, it has become a form of theft.
A form
That's
of
what it
theft.
has
Yeah.
become. It is a form of theft. And the state must be cut back to size, and the arrogance of the politicians must be cut back to size as well. And they must understand they work for us, and their primary functions are to protect me and to make sure that I protect my private property, protect my life, to make sure that I live in an environment where I can trade and in a safe environment, do the basic stuff. That is their job and not these other fancy things. Stop doing that. That's your best contribution to the economy.
Fantastic, Davi. Wonderful to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much for doing this. Davi is the chief economist at Efficient Group. Wonderful to see you, sir.
Wonderful talking to you, Pumlani, and just keep on with the good work you're doing.
I won't stop. I'll keep going. Thank you so much. It's Pumlani
Okay,
Majosi. This is
Pumlani.
Pumlani Majosi show. Remember to subscribe and to keep the conversation going. We'll chat soon.